Important conversations about deceptive practices.
Good evening. Welcome to the Hopkinton School Committee regular meeting of Thursday, October 17th, 2019. I'd like to call the meeting to order and request all those present and willing to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just make sure this cord is not doing the...
It's time for public comment. We have a lot of guests today. Anybody interested in making a comment? No? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to what seems like to be the reason why we have a lot of guests here. We have a special recognition today. Dr. Kavanaugh.
So our special recognition tonight is Paul DeBona, who is our former crossing guard and traffic director. You probably saw him at any time between 7 and 7:30 out in front of the high school, and then he would move down the road a bit to the Hopkins School, and then down the road a bit to the Marathon Elementary School. So Paul's been with us now for 6 years, is that correct? I think it's 6 years, Paul. It seems like only one, but it's been a very, very long time that he's been with us. 6 long, cold winters. But Paul, kidding aside, we really do want to thank you for all of your service. I was just joking with him that he was going to miss my August phone call welcoming him back and having our meetings and talking about which way traffic was going to go, and then opening day was always quite a soiree out there with a whole bunch of hands on deck. But after those early meetings, it was really Paul who was out there battling the rain and battling the snow pretty much single-handedly. So I know that on behalf of the committee and on behalf of all of our principals, Mary Ann Fitzpatrick, Jen, we just want to say thank you for your years of service, and we are very, very grateful for all that you did. It was a pleasure. We will miss you.
Paul, would you like to join us, please? Thank you so much, Paul. I remember my first encounter with you was at Center School, and I made a wrong turn. And Paul corrected me right away. He was very respectful, but still very firm. You're not supposed to do that, he said. And we became good friends thereafter, and I see you passing by. Doesn't matter whether it's summer, winter, rainy, stormy, you're there. I also saw you the other day standing a little further away with a new guard at Marathon, and there was a smile on your face. So it was lovely to watch that. I mean, when you're there at your job, of course, there's a seriousness to it. So it was really nice to see you take a step back and perhaps watch what's going on. Thank you for your service. It's so appreciated.
Thank you.
And can I add, the kids love you so much. It's so, I would drive by with a car full of kids, and they'd be like, oh, and they'd be leaning out the window waving as you were doing your job. So, they're going to miss you. The kids, yeah, it really made a big impact on them.
Bus 6 always cheers me.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you for keeping our kids so safe.
My pleasure.
Really important job.
I'll just add very quickly too, it's always important to get the perspective of the people that are, boots on the ground. Yeah. And Paul's insight is always extremely valuable, not only with what is going on currently, but what he can see in the future and what our issues will be looking forward. So that insight has allowed us to reroute traffic multiple times, get ahead of issues as we continue the growth and the changes in Hayden Row and everything else. So it's been great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now what? Now you're going to sit inside all winter? You're not going to be out there and you're going to be laughing, pointing? Yeah.
No, I have my own consulting firm.
That's good.
Write construction specifications for architects and engineers and landscape architects, so I'm busy doing a lot of that. business seems to be very good, so.
Good. You won't be
Actually,
bored.
do some facilities management for the Hopkinton Center for the Arts.
Oh, good. So you'll be around, close by.
I'm in the neighborhood.
You got it.
Great.
Good.
Literally.
Yeah.
So if you want to just come up, we just have a
This is so nice.
little certificate for you in recognition of all of your outstanding commitment and years of service to the Hopkinton Public Schools.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you. Thank you so much.
I would also like to give a shout out today, something that I missed last time we met when Ms. Parsons walked us through the MCAS results. This is a shout out to all the fantastic teachers in our district who work very hard to create a learning environment, K through 12, which continues to inspire students to explore, learn, and enjoy the learning process. I want to recognize Ms. Jen Parsons' work with curriculum leads and teachers in creating innovative programming, which makes our students think deeper and ask pertinent questions. I know you do this while working under constraints set forth by the state on measurements. Your job is not easy. Thank you for continuing to do a fabulous job. MCAS is but one measure. There are many, many measures we get to observe as parents and community members. And quite simply, you're the best. Thank you.
Thank you. It's, all of this work is a team effort, and I think everyone understands that, but certainly your recognition. You must have been so wowed by all the numbers last meeting that we didn't get to this part of the conversation, but I truly appreciate your sentiments, and I think that your comment about MCAS being one measure is a really nice segue into what we're going to talk about in the report that I'll be sharing with Mr. Bishop and Mrs. Crisafulli tonight, so thank you very much.
Any other recognitions tonight?
No.
Okay. Moving on to the next order of business, reports. We have the school council tonight. Please join us. Should we invite him here?
Sure, I can get up and then we can ask.
Scoot up one just so we can get the microphone. There you go.
We want you on camera.
Should we introduce ourselves? Okay, I'm Megan, and I'm a senior.
I'm Steven, I'm also a senior.
And we just want to say school year has been going very well so far. We love the Hiller Days every Friday that have been implemented. Also, next week is a big week for us. We have Spirit Week here. So I think it's USA Day, Tacky Tourist Day, Whiteout, Hiller Pride Day, and Color Blast.
Yeah.
And the seniors, of course, do the opposite. And Friday we have the pep rally, so student council has been very busy planning that and everything. I think the football game has been moved to Saturday, but we still have a lot of games. We have the field hockey senior night and a big volleyball game against Ashland, which was a super good game last time, so we're hoping to get a lot of people to those games instead. And also we have our first homecoming dance, which is on Friday night, which is for juniors and seniors after the volleyball game.
On Tuesday night this week we had the NHS ceremony. So we had 185 kids made NHS this year, which is the most ever, so it's awesome. It's really a testament to the staff and the students here, so it was pretty cool to see that. And then both of us are members of the Principal's Cabinet with Mr. Bishop, so we had our first meeting a couple weeks, 2 weeks ago, I think. So we're working hard. We're going to look into implementing like a flex block, so we're going to take some trips to some other schools that already have a flex block, and we're going to kind of see how their day runs with it and kind of see if that's something we're going to implement. So that's something we're really looking forward to. I think that'd be awesome to have. And also, just from the students' standpoint, we want to also thank Mr. DeBona for all his hard work. All of us running late every day. He really is a big help, and we're going to miss him. So it was sad to see him go, but we thank him. That's pretty much all we got today.
It's a good list.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Looks like you have busy days.
Yeah.
Yes.
What plans for Halloween?
Oh yes, we also have senior Halloween coming up. So everyone has to figure out their costumes. We have the senior Halloween breakfast. So that's a really fun day to look forward to.
And no parade to compete with it this year?
Yeah. Don't have to worry about that.
Unfortunately, right?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Thank you for making the time and coming here.
Thank you for having
Yeah,
us.
glad things are going so well. Starting out the year here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda, Assistant Superintendent's Report. Ms. Parson.
Sure. Mr. Bishop and Carla and Val, actually.
Hi, good evening.
Okay. Do you like to see it?
That same presentation as she was. Let's talk to principal about that.
How your projector is not aligned to your screen anymore.
We'll get check on that.
I'd call Mr. Ghosh.
Well, thank you all for having us for this presentation tonight. Do you all want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name is Carla Crisafulli, and I'm the SML of Math at the high school.
And I think you know Mr. Bishop.
I'm Valerie Lekchansky. I retired last spring after teaching in Hopkinton for quite a while. I get tired of saying the number. But anyway, so this year I'm working as sort of a STEAM consultant for the district.
So we appreciate your openness to this presentation tonight, so we can begin the work of sharing out with all of you and with our faculty some of the work that's been happening since this past June. So I'll provide a little bit of history, and then Carla and Evan and Val will take over a little more of the details of the presentation. So essentially, the Department of Ed is really very cognizant of the fact that there are a lot of changes in the job force right now, and a lot of changes in the local economy and job opportunities, especially in sciences, STEM, some medical fields, areas where we don't typically focus on during the high school years. And they put out some grant funding specifically to support high schools and high school students in career vocational technical education. And historically, we would think about that kind of education at places other than an academic high school like Hopkinton High School. And the state and the job market is really becoming more aware of the fact that there are many, many opportunities for students and pathways that may not necessarily include the typical, I'm going to high school for 4 years, I'm going to an academically focused college for 4 years, and I'm going to emerge with this degree and come out with this job that I've had all planned since the 8th grade. And there are many, in fact, right now, and Carla will speak to this, we don't even know what all of the jobs are. When our students emerge from high school and from whatever their next post-secondary steps may be, we don't necessarily know today what our freshmen will be facing and have opportunities to explore when they leave. But we do know that there is preparation that we can provide for our students, and there are some different pathways that we may want to allow them to access while at Hopkinton High School, or even some opportunities outside of Hopkinton High School during their time here. So essentially, DESE put out this grant, which we applied for and received, and allowed us to do some planning over the summer. And it was a very finite time period that they allowed for this grant, and we might have gotten the grant, I don't know if I've said this to you already, but because the work needed to be done in July and August, it's possible that only some crazy people said, yeah, we want to do all this heavy-duty planning over the summer. So for whatever reason, I think probably luck might have been some of it, but I also think with this team, with all of the high school's SMLs, working together, we put together a pretty solid proposal to the state for things that we wanted to work towards. So there were about 10 faculty members, most of whom work at the high school, but we also had some participants from Hopkins School as well, specifically looking at job opportunities and a job resource guide that will be created for all students, but also specifically for students with disabilities. So through our planning, we've come up with 4 overarching goal areas, all in line with what Desi is saying are current best practices in looking at high school education and post-secondary education. And so tonight what we want to do is share a little bit about where through our work we've kind of whittled this down to 4 key areas that we think will be helpful and supportive for our students, and that we will plan to continue more observation, more planning over the course of this next school year. So do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So the starting point from this grant was really 2 basic ideas. The first being that there are plenty of people in Massachusetts and plenty of jobs, but the skills don't match those jobs that are available. So that was kind of the starting point of this grant and why the Department of Education has started funding grants to help schools meet the needs of the labor force. And the other tenet of this grant is there are a lot of low-paying jobs, jobs that make between $25,000 and $35,000. And if you have no education past high school, there's a good chance, statistically speaking, that's one of the jobs you're going to end up with. Now, as the labor market is changing in Massachusetts, many of these jobs, if you get some college in a targeted area, some college meaning some courses, a certificate, an associate's degree, you can take that $25,000 to $35,000 and double your income. So the Department Ed is trying to connect people with either who may or may not be on the 4-year college path with some other opportunities to not just access those minimum wage jobs. So that was kind of the starting point. So I was kind of the architect of this grant, and the starting place was really looking to see what the Department of Ed was doing. So they have 3 main initiatives right now going on. One is expanding career technical education. The second is something called Innovation Pathways, or developing innovation pathways in high school, and the third is starting an early college initiative. So the state was asking that either Chapter 74 programs, which are specific vocational programs, either be added to traditional high schools, or that vocational schools are better utilized, so more students can access those programs. Innovation Pathways are programs within a conventional high school that give students more exposure to work, to career exploration, to career education, and a lot of that is developing internship programs, capstone programs, and work studies. And the last is an early college initiative that's taken off across the state, where many students are able to attend community colleges their senior year. And they realize there's been a lot of money invested into getting kids to go to community college, but a lot of them aren't finishing, and they're finding that doing the senior year is giving kids a lot of those supports to be able to do it. So the Department of Education is targeting schools that are either gateway communities, have high populations of students who are underrepresented in STEM, or whose students are accessing college, and that's not Hopkinton. That isn't Hopkinton, but we do have these kids here, and there is not much here for them. So what we did was take a look at these initiatives and then make our own version. So we're going to call this the Hopkinton Light version. So we took all these main premises and really made it our own, what's going to work. So rather than being an early college designated high school, which is an incredible undertaking, you need a whole committee, it's a whole big process. We want to be able to offer traditional dual enrollment to our students for seniors, giving them an option to take either a certificate program or the first year of an associate's degree at Mass Bay. And the benefit to doing that senior year is we can provide those dual supports. Community colleges have supports for students, and we also have that that position here, that support here at the high school. And again, it will help students if they get some college under their belt, even if they decide not to do anything after that year, or if they do, they have a higher chance of landing a better paying job afterwards. So that's our first program. Actually, that's our third program, sorry. It is our first, sorry. The next thing that we're looking at are embedded learning experiences here. So rather than an Innovation Pathways High School, which again is another big undertaking, and that's really targeting gateway cities is what the department is targeting, we were hoping to offer our own embedded learning experiences program by offering a career explorations elective at school, which is open to absolutely every student at the high school. I can't think of another class that every student will be able to participate in here. So, and it's a very personalized class that we're thinking of offering. The Department of Education has put out a lot of resources where students can focus on exploration, immersion, and exposure. So it's really, so kids will be able to follow a very individualized approach to career exploration. So that we would like to offer as an elective next year. The other piece that we'd like to offer are internships and work-study programs. And so back in the 90s, I don't know if any of you have been in education that long, work-study was really kind of a dumping ground where kids would go and get credit for working just because they weren't cutting it academically. So the state has come out with all new requirements for work-study and internship programs. They're actually graded, like standards-based graded, where students are graded on career skills, like do you make eye contact? Do you show up on time? Do you show initiative? How well do you take feedback? These are all the new career readiness skills that the Department of Education has identified, and students actually work through that and get evaluated by their supervisors to get feedback of how to swing in the real world. So, and there are stipulations around that. The Department of Education, states you have to be 16. Everybody still has to finish their Mass Core requirements for graduation, but we would like to offer a program like this to anybody, to any kids who need to work on those skills, and other kids who would just like to take a deeper dive into looking at careers before they go to college. So our next program that we're looking at is offering career vocational expanding awareness about the career vocational technical education offerings that Keefe Tech has. So Keefe has always been there down the street, but a lot of the programs that they offer can lead to very strong paying jobs, either directly after high school or kids do go to college from there after college. So just bringing new awareness to the community that, four-year college is one option, but we have other options for students out there. And the last piece that we worked on this summer, which is not related to the Department of Education initiatives, was creating a career resource guide for students directly entering the workforce. 3 to 5% of our kids go directly to work afterwards, and that's it. They go to work. So we spent a lot of time compiling resources on how to find a job, how to search a job, on job fair, on all different aspects of career research that will help counselors provide different options for students. And there are a lot of resources with students with disabilities, because nationally, students with people with disabilities are underemployed or unemployed at higher rates than people without disabilities. So there are specific resources there also. Okay, so here are the same guiding principles that the Department of Education is using for their initiatives. Here are the principles that we're going to use: equitable access, guided academic pathways, enhanced student support, connection to career, and effective partnerships. And here are the 6 components of the programs that we want to focus on. That there's advising, labor market demand research, which we actually did a lot of this summer, integrated instruction, work-based learning, credential preparation, and post-secondary linkages. So Alan was going to talk about this slide, but he's not here tonight, so I'll just continue with this one. So now we're going to talk about the 4 initiatives a little more in depth. The first one is expanding CVT CTE opportunities with Keefe Technical High School. And I will tell you, I did start at this, I did start with this grant by looking at Keefe Tech, because in full disclosure, that's where I started my career over 20 years ago, and my husband has been there for 30 years now, so I do have kind of a leg up on what goes on at Keefe Tech, and am very open to what they have to offer. So basically, our idea is just to let everybody know, this is Keefe Tech, this is what's here. There's a lot that's offered that our community just doesn't know about. So things that they've started doing so far is that now all students go on the 8th grade tour, which gives everybody a good view of the shops and job opportunities that Keefe offers. Keefe Tech is actually coming to the middle school in grades 6 and 7 to present on what they do, so kids will have, because what kids want to do for work is what they see, you know? Everybody wants to be a doctor because they've been to the doctors type of thing. So if they can see what goes on at a vocational school, they'll be more interested. Keefe Tech has also come to our back-to-school night in 8th grade, and just to say, hey, we're here, you know, hey, this is what we have to offer. If Hopkinton High School might not be the best place for your student, we have another good option. And we've also encouraged them to start using our social media outlets to say, hey, our back-to-school night is here. These are the great competitions that we're doing at Keefe. We're involved in this house building project. We're involved in this, you know, careers fair, just so the public is aware. So in terms of career, I didn't mention this earlier, in terms of more career technical education opportunities, another component of that grant is to pursue certificates and certificate programs. Now, we would like to, in addition to promoting or making people aware about Keefe Tech, we do want to start offering certificates here at the high school. So if you can get an Adobe certificate or desktop publishing or something here before you graduate, that will give you a leg up in the workforce. So Doug Scott is currently piloting one of those certificate offerings this semester, and we're hoping to offer as many as we can in the future. So Mr. Bishop is going to talk about the other 3 initiatives.
Thank you, Carla. It's my pleasure to talk about the next few parts of this grant. And I got to be honest, you touched upon these pretty well so far, so I won't dive in too deep in these initiatives, but I do want to thank Jen and Carla for the work that they've done in this grant. It's been remarkable, and I'm really excited for this opportunity for our students, particularly as our community continues to grow and to change. I think it's a really important time that we invest into these different options. We're working with Challenge Success. I think I've mentioned that before to all of you. It's a non-profit group out of Stanford University that works with communities like ours to kind of help students and families find balance. We actually sent a team of teachers, parents, and students to the training this past weekend. And we talk a lot about broadening your definition of success. And I think in a community like this, there is a standard kind of definition of success, which might be a 4.0 GPA in a top-tier college. But we need to be able to kind of embrace, celebrate the different types of pathways to success and happiness. And I think this work certainly is going to target certain students that need just a little bit more skill development, a little bit more tools in their tool bag to be able to be more successful when they graduate here from high school. So it's really important work, and again, I can't thank the 2 of them enough for all the behind-the-scenes work that they have done. So again, Carla talked a lot about some of these opportunities, so I'll try to kind of quickly go through them so you can ask us questions about the grant. It's cut off by this screen, I don't know why, but it's at the top it says embedded learning opportunities and experiences for our students. So I'll start there, kind of within the walls of HHS. We're really trying to kind of come up with a career explorations course elective that's available to all students. I think I may have mentioned to you before, we send a survey out to graduates of HHS. We have their Hiller alumni email, usually around Thanksgiving time. And last year, the 2 most common responses that we got back of how we should change or what we should do differently at the high school. One was to talk more about mental health awareness, which we've talked about. And the second was to have more opportunities to talk about specific careers, not just preparing students for college. So this class, I think, would target that. It would, obviously expose the different career options, exploration, It would also have students kind of pick an area of focus, maybe, that they want to look at throughout the course of the semester, maybe do a job shadow there, do a work visit, but it would ultimately kind of culminate with a capstone project. And there's also some resources that are provided by the DESE in terms of the kind of curriculum that you should follow for this class. But again, it's open to any student, and so that would be something we'd like to kind of embed within this grant. The second is the work-study internship program. We've had internships and work-study programs in the high school in the past. We have our senior project. You may be aware of this, that goes from the last month of the school year for seniors. We used to have a junior experience, it was called, where every junior would have 5 hours of either work-study or internship hours, but that just didn't get off the ground. So this is an opportunity for us to really beef up those programs. It's focusing on more upperclassmen. It can be both either the work-study or internship program can replace some classes, so this would be happening during the day. So students could take some classes here, maybe English and math at the high school, and then do a work-study or an internship to kind of take the place of the other courses that they're taking here. It gives students the opportunity who want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into some different careers, or maybe it's for students who really want to get into the workforce right when they want to graduate. It gives them the opportunity to kind of get in the door sooner. And as Carla talked about that last bullet point, we'd also work with the students on, those competencies that we keep talking about, showing initiative, taking feedback, making eye contact, those very important skills that they're going to need to be able to be successful in the workforce. And then there's also a component where we'd have a person working with the students, making sure that they're completing their hours, but there's also an evaluation kind of rubric system that the state has come up with that we would be kind of grading the students on based on the work that they're doing with their internship and work study. So again, really exciting stuff that we're looking forward to, kind of embedding within the walls here at Hopkinton. So the third initiative, and Carla talked about it, is that Mass Bay Community College dual enrollment, which is also something that's not new. We've had dual enrollment before, and I'd like to kind of point your attention to that bottom justification. I think previously, kind of that early college initiatives were more just about getting students to participate in community college, but what they were seeing was that students were not following through with the degrees and the certificates. So they're really pushing for students to now kind of use that dual enrollment option while they're still in high school, but get those wraparound services. That's the biggest part of this slide, in my opinion, is that wraparound service with whether it be a counselor or a support person or a career vocational coach maybe, that can help students kind of manage the workload both at the high school and at Mass Bay. The two most popular options are the stackable certificate option. For example, a few different stackable certificates would be tech support, a web developer, computer networking are just some examples of some of the different certificate options. And then they'd be able to get that certificate and get right into the workforce, and higher paying jobs usually come when they have that stackable certificate. Or that could serve kind of transitioning into an associate's degree. Or they can jump right into the first year of an associate's degree, depending on what they want to focus on. So to me, this is more about publicizing, educating, getting people aware that this is an option. It always has been an option. Not a lot of kids have taken advantage of it, but I think if we provide the wraparound support that I think we're able to do, I feel like this has a lot of potential for our students, so we're excited about this option as well. And then the fourth initiative, a little bit more straightforward, is kind of direct-to-work resource guide, which we've already started. We talked about the team of 10 people in the district that have been working together to come up with a resource guide that students can access, parents can access, guidance counselors can access, and work with students around finding jobs, upcoming career fairs, specific different opportunities for students with disabilities, interview skills, which is not up on this skip, but obviously something that's very important, resume writing, and just kind of the different occupational landscape that's out there. And it's not a book that's going to sit on the shelf. It has to be constantly updated for the different occupations that are out there, but also the different career fairs that are out there for students. So someone would have to kind of be the point person for this as well as we move forward. So those are the other three initiatives in addition to the collaboration with Keep Tech.
So essentially, we're putting all this together, and we're at the point now where we're thinking about what are our next steps and where do we go from here. So through this grant planning, DESE originally said we'll have one planning period, which will be July and August, and then we'll immediately ask people to write a second grant for, quote, implementation. And they heard from a lot of districts, ours included, that 2 months planning, July and August, really is not sufficient if you really want to roll something out and have staff involved and students and families. So they've offered a second round of planning, and we will be applying for that over the next couple of weeks. And our goal with that would be really to take everything that we've talked about tonight, which is really, and it's very much in its infancy in terms of where we are. I think we've made a lot of progress, and we have a great foundation, but we have a lot of work to do to really bring this to fruition. So we need to more clearly articulate the plans that we've talked about tonight, and really talk about what is that going to look like with teachers and students from the ground level up. We need to continue to inform, and Carla and Evan have done a great job of starting to roll this out with faculty, but we certainly haven't rolled it out to the fullest extent, nor have we with our families yet. So part of the work will be really working with our guidance department and supporting them. They're some of the first people who work with students and listen to some of their questions and help provide them with some counsel in terms of what they plan to do next. So some of our work over the course of this next few months will be really working with that group of people and building their leadership skills in this area. We're hoping to do some piloting this spring of some students taking some school day classes at Mass Bay, so we can kind of get a flavor of what that will be like with small numbers, not large numbers. And kind of a nice segue into Val's talk that she's going to give in just a moment, we will continue our collaboration with Valerie. So it's really been amazing to have a full-time STEAM coordinator, and what I thought was amazing work from Valerie last year when she was still working, at her day job as chemistry SML. She continued to promote a lot of the STEAM work and really drive that in this district last year, but now to see the power of what she's been able to do when this is really her full-time job has really been amazing, and I think the momentum is really growing amongst our teachers based on what she's been able to do. And a significant part of the work she's doing right now is starting to make connections with businesses in the area. And so her work with STEAM is going to really work hand in hand with what we're hoping to see in terms of internships and things like that. So the next step will be to continue our focus with DESE and the grants, and this spring we will apply for the implementation grant, which we will keep our fingers crossed that we'll be awarded that, and to help us fund some of the initiatives that we talked about tonight.
Two quick things. Yes. Just to, Jen mentioned it, so Carla's done a really nice job, along with Val. In some of our building-based meetings this year, we've been breaking up into interdisciplinary groups. So we've had our English and history groups come together, our wellness, special education, and guidance groups come together, our STEAM group came together, and they gave most of this presentation to department members in those departments and got some really good feedback. Carla also met with the guidance department in one of their department meetings to get them caught up to speed. So that's been really beneficial for those groups. Again, not the larger school yet, but just some key stakeholders in this. There's also an open house, just a quick plug for Mass Bay, on November 14th that's coming up that we've put out on our website and shared with families. And I don't know if you want to quickly talk about the scripting class that's currently going on here, offered by Mass Bay at our high school, where some of our high school students are taking part.
Yeah, so that was kind of the part of the impetus to move forward with dual enrollment, is the Department of Higher Education has started early college classes by hosting them at high schools. But they were finding that model, like we had talked about before, and that's why we have this computer scripting course here. And Mass Bay is offering it because it is one of those Comp Sci 101 classes that is a baseline for many, many majors, both not only at Mass Bay, but at any of the Massachusetts schools for students going into computers. So yeah, that was the start, was our first by offering a class, and then now trying to follow their lead to get kids to go to their campus.
Yeah, and it's free for low-income minority students. It's a combination of kids from Hopkinton, Ashland, Milford. They were actually just leaving as we were all coming in.
But it's pure, and they hate it when I compare them to Brita, because they don't want to have to be compared to Brita for people to know what they do. But their boxes are right next to Brita's in Target. But anyway, the chemistry teachers have gone there before, and it's a marvelous place. And so we're going to take some students there to observe the testing in the lab and that sort of thing. And I forgot to put there, but also that Mass Bay open house, we're making a bus available for parents and families to go to that open house if they want on a Saturday, if transportation's an issue. That'll be funded too. So I think that's remarkable in just a couple of weeks, the response that we've gotten. So that's one component. The teachers can make proposals for funding. These are some of the other things I'm working on. So one of the things the teachers said, and I heard across the board, is
and the career piece as well, really want to have kids learning more about careers, but how they're using what they're learning in the classroom in the careers, and whether it's math or it's science, that sort of thing, and the interdisciplinary piece too. So I've started this 2 to 3 minute video program, and we reached out to a few graduates, just like, can we pilot it, because there's a form they fill out and they have to upload, and I just want to make sure all the mechanics are working. So we've been working on that, and we have, I think, 5 or 6 so far that have done it, with some more promising to do it in the next week or two, and I think it's going pretty smoothly, and then I think we're ready to roll it out to the community and more graduates and friends and family, anybody that knows anyone that thinks it would be they would be a good candidate for it. The one Dr. Kavanagh is trying to show you is a woodworker. And in the videos, we want to look at that whole range of careers, to your question, right? How are we going to sort of sell these careers? And we're going to reach out to the whole range. Find an expert database. We started a few years ago on the STEAM team, and I think we had 130 parents respond with questions like, would you be interested in supporting STEM in the district? And there was a series of questions where I'm available to be a guest speaker, or I'm available to judge projects. There was a whole list of things, right? Now we've added to that, such as, would you be interested in doing a 3-minute selfie video? Would you be interested in talking about your career? The shadowing piece is there. Would you be interested in having teachers or students come shadow or do internships? And so we've been tweaking that, and that's also about ready to go out again. It'll go to parents again, it'll be on the website and things, but now we're ready to expand to the businesses, which we really didn't have time to do, because now you need that person, me, to go to the businesses and say, this is what we're doing, and we'd really like you, if you would like to participate. So that'll be a bigger outreach than we had before. And both of those two, I just want to say, in terms of Dr. Kavanagh talking about the funding, I'm looking for ways we can use this grant to have longevity, right? So the one and dones are great, and I think there's a place for them, but these are some things that will last, right? And that can be continued to build upon. And the other grant, there's going to be some people there, yes, I'm interested in shadowing, having kids shadow or teachers shadow, or that sort of thing. That data will be there as we move forward on the other grants as well. I'm looking for ways to partner with different organizations in town. We've already been working with the Hopkinton Library, where they're sharing events that they're going to be holding at the library with us, and we're using the mechanisms we have in place in our different buildings to share that with parents. And we also have put together a list of, in K through 8, what science topics are covered which seasons. So if a parent goes to the Hopkinton Library and says, I have a 3rd grader, what are they learning in science? They know. And they have said that they've talked to librarians in other towns, and the other librarians are very jealous that they don't have access to that information. And so that's just one, but that's the kind of thing that we want to be working on this year, and expanding those sorts of partnerships. For the career piece at the high school, I've been using the mechanism of the Student Memo of the Week that goes out every Sunday to all the students at the high school, and I've been doing a weekly article on STEAM careers, another thing to your point. And in September, each article was about, like, why is A in STEM now, and why is STEM now STEAM? And so it was a lot of careers where art meets the others, right? So it was art restoration, different things like that. This month the theme has been STEM careers that don't need a 4-year degree, and I've been giving the data about what kind of salaries you can earn, and I have a day in the life of a paramedic, a day in the life of a dental hygienist, series of videos that students could watch. So we'll continue that theme for a while as well, but I think that the videos of the videos, 3-minute videos, as well as this, are just some of the things that we can put in place to sort of sell those other careers. We're using the Student Memo of the Week to share upcoming events in the area, as well as the other buildings. So I've shared information with all the building principals to pass on as they see fit. Framingham State has some programs coming up in their planetarium for families with students age 6 and up. And so I'm just communicating that to pass on as appropriate. And I'm also sharing professional development opportunities for teachers as they come across my desk. So we've put in place, we've started we've been working on the 3-minute video, we've been working on the mechanism for our teachers to apply for funding, we've been working on the student memo of the week, and I feel like a lot of infrastructure to get some things set up. And now, next week is STEM week, so I want to give a shout out to all the STEM educators in the district who have been working really, really hard in planning some fantastic opportunities next week in all the buildings, and we'll be getting some press on that, I hope, trying. Okay. And then we're going to move to the community outreach. So as we start reaching out now with those tools about the videos and those sorts of things, we'll be reaching out to look for those authentic applications. I've already had a couple meetings with some Hopkinton Conservation Commission and some other people in town about how they use STEM, and then sharing those notes with the appropriate educators. I'll be reaching out for shadowing opportunities and hopefully laying some groundwork for some businesses that are open to that. Looking for opportunities for teachers to go out and tour labs. We piloted that at the high school when I was SML, and that was very well received by the teachers to go out and tour the labs and bring that back to the classroom. We're talking with the SMLs at the high school about a building-based meeting where maybe there's 20 experts that come in. It's sort of a speed dating thing, but the teachers get to go around and talk to some experts, because a database is great, but there's nothing like face-to-face, right? So if we can get some people talking, I think that we can foster some of those relationships. I think that'll be very impactful. And just an example of how this sort of work can impact the classrooms, teachers going out into labs or a virtual program, or even what some might consider a one and done, where you bring in that sort of New England aquarium thing. Oh, you need access, don't you? Yeah. No. Well, I think you can see enough. So this is just one example. So Doug Scott and Mr. Bishop and I went to the NASA one in Fenway, and this was one of the activities. So on the left, there was an avalanche ramp from the Science Museum where you can't quite tell, but at the bottom there was a snowboarder, and the students on the left, and the students had to design a barrier that would protect the snowboarder in an avalanche, and the avalanche was white marbles. You can see they're coming down the ramp. Well, Mr. Scott and I were talking about what a great, engineering problem solving, and we have a lot of standards around erosion and different things like that. So Mr. Scott being Mr. Scott and the wizard that he is, in the middle one, that's the ramp he built, and he's integrating that into the 6th grade engineering program.
Very cool.
So there you go. So you just never know, right? So even these one and dones, there's a teacher that say, I can use that, I can build that. Not everyone can do that. But he's got, at the bottom, he uses 3D printer to make a little skier, and, there's... Amazing. Unbelievable, yes. It's not unbelievable, but that's where he is. So on the next slide, I'm sorry, those videos aren't going to work. I think if we look at all those sort of initiatives and different things we're putting in place, I really think we're going to be hitting all these. Very excited. And I think we're doing it in a way that's going to impact not just the current students, but the future students as well, which is one of our goals. Okay, that's it.
This is fabulous. And by the way, it's very, I don't know, can people tell she's excited about her new job? It's so evident.
Thank you.
I think it's when you bring love and passion to your work, it just goes to another level altogether. And so thank you.
Well, I thank Dr. Kavanaugh for getting the grant so that we could do it. Our fingers were crossed.
This is fabulous.
3 years in the making, so it's exciting.
Yeah.
Please keep doing what you're doing.
No, thank you.
And, if you need any connections whatsoever on the community front, which I'm very excited to see that you're looking to merge that, please reach out. I think all of us have different connections, but we have a group called the Community Communications Group, where we have different members of the community leadership from different organizations who come together. Dr. Kavanaugh is also well aware, so I hope you make use of that.
Oh, great. And, I want to reach out to labor neighbors and go out to the businesses, like I said, and we'll reach out to graduates, but I said if even all the STEM educators in the building each knew 2 or 3 people, I mean, in the district, knew 2 or 3 people. Like, I've got this friend who does this, and the woodworker you were going to show was just someone new who does woodworking as a hobby, and he shows how he uses STEAM in his woodworking. And, yeah.
And he also puts together videos, so he's really dynamic.
Yes, he knows how to do it.
He's great.
Yeah.
He's a good video.
Yeah, I hope we get to see the video via email somewhere, perhaps. You could send
We'll
us a
send
link.
you a few.
Oh, yes, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
there are a couple of great ones.
Thank you.
So thank you, yes, I'll let you know when we have the links and everything ready to go, yeah.
Yes, and I want to thank you, Valerie, for the work you did even before we had this grant. I mean, the grant, I think, was just ready to launch because there were 2 years of foundation, so
Well,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
Thank you for coming out tonight. Dr. Kavanaugh, your report.
All right, so just these first couple of pictures, I had kind of been around the district and taken a couple of pictures, inserted one from the website, but I guess the point in these is that if you take a look at them, you can see the teaching and learning. We are full steam ahead right now. That one in the top center there is one of my favorites. I was in an art class at the middle school, and they were making linoleum prints, and it was really just amazing to see those kids sort of start crafting them on a computer, and then suddenly they were actually just, kind of hand carving them when they got to the linoleum. So you can also see a foreign language class there at the middle school in the lower right, and a first grade classroom over at Marathon. We have had more progress in the White House. You can see some of our students there. I really put this slide in because I wanted to thank people in this community. We had put out sort of a wish list. The kids had gone and done kind of a registry, so to speak, at Bed Bath & Beyond, and I think they had some products from Amazon. In the picture on the left, you can see we are using our brand spanking new vacuum cleaner. And on the right, our new couch has arrived as well. So it's really exciting to have those pieces in place, and it sort of feels like, a birthday or something over at central office right now, because gifts just keep arriving, and we keep legging them across the street. So it's really exciting.
If I can interrupt you, but that
Please
has made some nice positive feedback on social media about that.
Oh, that's lovely, yeah, yep. The capacity study, some people have asked when will we have some results from that. The preliminary results should be to us at the end of October, and then the final results will be to us at the end of November. So people who are very much interested should probably tune in to the next school committee meeting, which is on November 14th, and then the one after that on December 5th. I have also been in contact with the folks who are doing sort of the town growth committee work, and they are having a public forum on the 20th of November. So we're also working very closely with them, kind of creating this, united group where we are in communication so that we're all on the same page, because I think that's really important to get accurate and consistent messaging out to the community. So for folks who are interested, November 14th and December 5th on this end. I wanted to talk a little bit about space. I happened to be here in the high school on Wednesday, October 9th, and at 7:35 in the morning, so it's during the first period of the school day, I snapped a few pictures. If you look at that picture, it's off in the distance here at the library, you can see that there are probably a dozen kids in that picture, and they are all in this area right here. And if I had turned the camera down to that end of the library, you would have seen many, many more kids sort of all sitting in that area over there. At the same time, in the bottom left, you can see that there are maybe 40, 50 students in that cafeteria. And in the upper right, there are probably another 10 kids who are sitting just outside the library at the high tops. A conversation with the administration here at the high school, they let me know, no, those are all kids who would sort of typically be in study halls at this point in time. And I show you those to kind of impress upon you that there are not classrooms available for those study halls. And so those kids are in these locations because we have sort of rehoused housed them. Now, it's not necessarily a problem that they are in these other locations, but I think it speaks to the demand for space in this building. And there was nothing kind of calculated about it. I just happened to be here and noted that there were a lot of kids in these locations at that point in time, and I thought this would be pretty informative to add to this presentation tonight, to sort of show you just how many kids are displaced and don't really have classrooms for study halls. I wanted to revisit the enrollment numbers so that you could again see where we are in terms of capacity. Our current enrollment as of yesterday, the 16th, we are at 3,978 students, which is more than the last time I presented to you. Our approvals for this year, we are at 269. So I wanted to think a little bit about just the Elmwood School, and so I've taken the Elmwood School as an example. If we wanted to project out for next year, and we looked at these predictions, I want to take a look at the number of students right now in the first grade. The number of students right now in the first grade, there are 297 of them, and they are spread out over 13 classrooms. It would be well advised to create a 14th classroom for those students when they come into the second grade at Elmwood. So if we're taking 14 first grade classrooms and transitioning to them to where there used to be 12 classrooms, that's 2 additional classrooms at the Elmwood School for grade 2 next year. When our second graders move to third grade, it would be advised not to have 12 classrooms, but rather to create 13 classrooms. So what we're essentially saying is right now, looking at those numbers as they exist today, we probably need 3 additional classrooms. Now, I want to turn your attention to the fact that this year, we had 32 students who were approved to enter second grade, and only 6 of them left. We had 30 students who were approved to enter third grade, and only 4 of them left. If we have the same kind of enrollment next year that we had this year, and right now all signs are pointing to the fact that we will probably have very similar enrollment, to add 3 classrooms to the Elmwood School may not really even be enough. So right now, Elmwood is using 25 regular classrooms, and the 26th classroom that we look at Elmwood is housing 2 different L teachers with 2 different sets of learning going on at the same time. What divides them in that classroom is just sort of a fabric divider, sorry. If we said we would need to remove those students there from that classroom and see if we could find 2 smaller locations to house the L kids, I don't believe that's going to work, because if I look at the kids that we have in first grade and second grade right now, there are over 100 L students. So what that probably means is I need another classroom or another instructional space just for the Ls. And we could move them into the place right now that is the paraprofessional workroom lunchroom. We might be able to put them on a stage in the cafeteria. But again, you could only put them there when there isn't lunch going on, because you can't have instruction and lunch going on in the same space simultaneously just because of noise and distraction. What I'm saying is that I really think that we are going to need to add those modular classrooms to Elmwood. I don't really see that there's a way around it, given our current enrollment and the predictions about enrollment that there will be for next year. I know I've had many conversations with you about what does it mean to add classrooms, but it's also important for us to take a look at what does it mean when we have to add teachers to the related arts. And since we've already had Mrs. Bolello's budget meeting for this year, this data was accessible to me, and so I'm looking at Hopkins, and right now what we're thinking about is we would need to add 4 sections of health and 8 sections of PE for next year, so we'd need 0.4 wellness FTE, going from 2.4 teachers to 2.8 teachers. We would need to go from 1.9 FTEs in music to 2.0 FTEs in music. We would need to go from 0.8 FTEs in art, adding 0.2 to a whole FTE, in art. In terms of our adjustment counselors, if we are at 1.8 FTEs right now, we'd have to go to 2.0. And I know that people wonder, do we really need those adjustment counselors? Do we really need those guidance counselors? Recommended caseloads for counseling would be 250 students to one counselor. Currently at Hopkins, we have 322 students to one counselor. Even with the addition of .2, if we have 620 students at Hopkins next year, which is what is predicted, we're talking 310 students to one counselor. So we do need these positions, and we need an additional .2 clerical secretarial position there. So that's what I mean when I say we can't just hire 4 classroom teachers, we also have to consider another 1.0 FTE to make up for all of the related arts. Just as another example of how the budget is increasing due to enrollment growth, Mrs. Bolello has added $2,088 to her science line item. The reason that she's had to do that is very simply science supplies, right? There are all kinds of consumables that our kids use in terms of education and science, and that's just the basic dollar amount to put science materials in kids' hands. And one of the things that we have learned along the way is that the teachers across the board in our district are paying for a lot of those supplies right now out of their own pockets, and that just doesn't feel right. So that's pretty much the budget update at this point in terms of its impact, the enrollment impact on budget. I did want to have a little shout out here. We had a recognition of Remy Van Dusen. That took place at the Select Board meeting on Monday, October 7th. Remy was able to call 911, and essentially that boy saved his father's life. But I think part of the reason that we celebrate this is Kathy Lewinsky had been his wellness teacher and taught them what anaphylactic shock looks like and how to dial 911 and explain to someone on the other end of the phone how to get help. And genuinely, that boy was able to save his dad's life. So it was a really beautiful evening. The fire marshal for the state came out, and so did Carolyn Dykema, and really gave him quite a recognition. It was a lovely event. National Honor Society induction took place here at the high school. On Tuesday evening, we had 185 students inducted to not only the National Honor Society, but also the National Art Honor Society and the Triumph Music Honor Society. And I know that our student council kids articulated this earlier tonight. And finally, just an update on my own goals, where we are in that process. So my district improvement goal number 1, was to seek capital funding for recommended building addition and renovation projects. And as you can see, we're sort of on track to do that. We're talking about additional modular classrooms at Elmwood and Hopkins. It's probably 3 or 4 at Elmwood and definitely 4 at Hopkins. We have models out there now that are 2-story models, and I know that Mrs. Rothmick will talk about this in the capital project, her capital budget report tonight. We have explored, in addition to Hopkinton High School, we've been working with the DRA firm, hoping to get some engineering design specs together so that we can either start construction at the end of this school year or at the end of next school year. That would put 6 additional classrooms on this building. It's not unlikely that we will, in coming years, need an addition to the marathon school. Right now, as you probably saw, we have 23 and 24 kids in first grade classrooms. It will start to mean that we are going to have to take space away from art classrooms, maybe from the Family Resource Center, and turn those spaces into classrooms. In doing some preliminary research with Lauren, we will definitely need to take the health room to create another preschool space for next year. And the last part is working with the MSBA to determine outcomes for Elmwood. Again, along the same lines, District Improvement Goal 1, working with the Director of Finance, the Director of Buildings and Grounds, the architectural firm, and the MSBA to determine the costs and the needs that we have as a district to grow our classroom space. One thing here that's really important, and I hope that the community sort of gets the sense of the magnitude of our enrollment growth. In the last 3 years, we have added 500 students to the Hopkinton Public Schools. If you think back to 3 years ago or 4 years ago, that's how many kids used to be in Elmwood or used to be in Marathon. We had 26 classrooms in Elmwood to house those students. We had 24 classrooms in Marathon, Hopkins to house those students. We have added no classroom space, and we have added 500 kids. It really is time for us to get very serious about thinking about where those classrooms are going to be, whether they are modular or additions, and I think that the time is now to start investing in those. I mean, I don't think we can have another 250 kids join our district in the fall of 2020, and we would be able to really house them appropriately. I mean, not without having class sizes that are enormous, and more kids occupying just open space in our schools. Professional practice, the shout out here goes to Jen Parson.
Until tomorrow.
Yes, we'll see how the shout out is at 2:15 tomorrow. No, I'm only joking about that. So Jen has worked tirelessly to bring Dr. Adolph Brown to Hopkinton tomorrow. Dr. Brown promotes culturally sensitive communication in our schools and really promotes excellence for all students. And, you know, he really talks about better today than yesterday, better this year than last year. And I think his work is so profound. So, Jen, thank you for all of the work you've done on that. Really, thank you. My professional practice goal number 3, I have promised to use HCAM as a medium to share information with our community and with families. And I don't know if anyone is watching, but bi-weekly, I have been producing sort of 10-minute segments. They do budget updates, not dissimilar from what you saw tonight. So maybe people who are sleepless at 2 o'clock in the morning, you happen to be flipping through the channel, you might see me there in a 10-minute segment. And then the other part of that is just to foster transparency, sincerity, and frequent communication through the operating and the capital budget processes. I've really been trying to be as sincere as I can be and use just data to drive all of the decision making. And finally, goal 4, student achievement. Again, I have to thank Mr. Ghosh and Mrs. Parson. They've done an amazing amount of work with the Fuse Fellows, and we're going to have our first in-district leadership day on October 28th. You saw tonight that Carla Crisafulli and Mrs. Parson are working. I mean, just the work's been amazing on the CVT options for our kids. And in November, we'll be bringing in guided inquiry, and you might be wondering why guided inquiry. I've been kind of running around with this because I think it's really important. The social studies standards that came out last year, they talk an awful lot about the importance of guided inquiry. At the heart of the Standards for History and Social Science practice is the idea that knowledge and understanding arise from inquiry, asking questions, conducting research to find answers, analyzing ideas and discussions, presenting conclusions, and that's the kind of work that our consultant will help our teachers to design lessons around. When Mrs. Lachansky was here, she talked about the science practices. They do something very similar, and so a lot of the training that will happen here will be in the content areas, especially in social studies and science. I'll say that I'm probably more excited about Appendix B and these history and social science standards than I have been about almost any of the other standards that have come out from DESE. And that's it. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cavanaugh. That number, which is close to 270, it's quite a shock.
Quite a shock. It is, yes. And I just don't want us to get to September of 2020 and be in the same place. I really think we need to practice our preparedness. So.
Well, it would seem, looking at just everything that's going on with building and turnover in town, I would expect fully that we would have something very similar number-wise, if not more, next year.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's a scary thought.
Yeah, and I don't know how all the projections were, where they were, the official projections. So it's hard, and, you know, having to ramp up.
Yes.
All the work, whether it is curriculum-related, space-related, safety, transportation, extracurricular, everything that comes along with it.
Everything.
Or even space for graduation. All of those are in play here.
Yes.
Thank you for your videos. I do watch them.
Well, thank you. A viewership of 1. No,
there's more than 1, trust me.
Thank you. That's nice.
So thank you for bringing this. Any other thoughts, questions? Okay, we would move on to the chair report. I've approved the payroll warrants as outlined here, S2008 and S2008A. Payroll warrants have been included in your packet. I've also approved warrant numbers 20-017 and 20-018. These warrants are also included in your packet. I have a few updates. I had an opportunity to meet with Representative Dykema last week. Her office organized for this meeting along with Ms. Susan Nicole, who represented Senate President Spilka's office. And my goal there was primarily to impress upon them our growth-related needs and issues, and if there is anything from a state standpoint that we could possibly get some support. And this is just one of the initial conversations that started off. I shared some of the things that Dr. Kavanaugh had shared with us in September, both enrollment-wise as well as a snapshot of the high school situation. I also shared some of my own thoughts around challenges and opportunities. So challenges such as the resource strain for long duration, which could impact quality, facilities need funding constraints, challenges in introducing innovative programming in the face of growth needs. The opportune moment was also discussed in that we have very motivated leadership, both in terms of the school as well as the school committee. Also high-functioning teachers, a very involved community, and changing demographics. We went over areas where we could possibly seek state's assistance in the area of facilities, training, possibly related to diversity, if that's something that could be done, other areas as well as temporary resource grants, SEL. We also talked a little bit about the Student Opportunity Act and how that would possibly impact Hopkinton. Representative Dykema shared some of her experiences having been through the MSBA process for Marathon. She shared that she had been in touch with MSBA's Jack McCarthy, and her first recommendation was to get the community engaged from the start and bring the community along in the process. She also suggested tapping on community members and previous school committee members who were closely involved to gain insight in this process. She called out Ms. Nancy Burdick among several others. She said there was much learning throughout the process and she'd be willing to share more details with the entire committee. Both Representative Dykema and Ms. Nicole expressed interest in learning of the findings of the capacity study to understand long-range impact, planning, and needs and how they could possibly assess. They both suggested some ways in which state can and cannot assess. So short-term may not be, but some innovative programming such as what you have done with teammates are some of the things which are possibilities. On a discussion on innovation, there was suggestion on compiling a list of known resources for community members and making them readily available. They both also expressed interest in regional collaborative efforts. Representative Dykema offered to revive the regional Metro West Innovation Roundtable Consortium. I offered to assist in both of those areas. Representative Dykema was willing to come and visit us here and speak about the Student Opportunity Act as it passes through the House. As next steps, I hope to be able to invite Representative Dykema to a future meeting and perhaps have some more further conversations on what are some of the things that we can possibly request from the state. I also shared the school committee budget session schedules with the chairs of Select Board Appropriations Committee and requested we form the budget advisory group and schedule some meeting sessions. I'm waiting to hear from them. Also, the SC budget review schedule was shared with other boards to which we have established liaison roles. This is again part of our school committee goals, our number one goal to support with all the growth-related needs that are coming up. We do need to reach out to CPAC, HPTA, HEF boosters, HMA that we had talked about, and I was wondering if there are any volunteers who want to reach out. Are you able to reach out to HMA, perhaps, Amanda? Sure. Just trying to put you on the spot here.
I would be happy to.
Or boosters. CPAC? Who else? HPTA, HEF? I can reach out? Yeah, okay, great, thank you. And are there any other organizations we're missing that we should invite in? Or let them know at least that these are things that are coming up, right? If anything comes up, that'd be great. Also, with winter and snow season not too far, I reached out to Planning Board Chair Muriel Kramer and Mr. John Coutinho on the matter related to the Legacy Farm North bus stop, and if there was any further assistance that they need post the survey results that Dr. Kavanaugh had already shared. I've not yet heard back from them. Select Board Chair Brendan Tedstone weighed in that the option provided was well thought out by the town, and the residents seem to have rejected it based on the survey results. So we're yet to hear further on this. No action at this point. There was a request that came in from one of the community members who had talked about the Columbus Day / Indigenous Day approach that we were taking. So I had an opportunity to visit the Upton Stone Chamber and Pratt Hill on the Narragansett land in Upton. It was a humbling experience for me to learn about the tribe, their wisdom, and some of their stories. As I shared, I went there in the context of the Columbus Day conversation, the renaming. After my visit, I wonder why we don't already have an Indigenous Peoples Day. We should have had it already. But I also wondered why it needed to be marked on Columbus Day. It seemed to me that the summer solstice or winter solstice were very important days for Native Indians, and perhaps we may all benefit if that was a day marked. I shared all this with Dr. Kavanaugh to consider as part of the calendar committee, and I've also offered to connect with the NITPHT members, which is the Narragansett Tribe Preservation Society, for any further conversations on the holiday marking or introduction of any new curriculum or thoughtful field trips. Upton is not very far. That's what I have for updates in terms of the school committee office hours. Continuing on the school committee's goals on supporting town growth, we use that as a theme for the conversation for this month's office hours. I thought we had a good turnout. We had Nancy and Meg. What did you think? It was great, right? I heard a few things. I heard from a community member who discussed the emerging facilities needs. And he suggested that the school committee many times is very internal focused, looking at, the school's needs and what have you, and that we should probably consider seeing what is happening outside, including available land parcels. We discussed about growth as an opportunity, and with the much needed space, we discussed if there was room for innovative offerings such as project-based learning or expeditionary learning as we look to create new space. I shared the work underway with capacity study and some upcoming work to engage the community. He expressed willingness to be part of the solution process. Another parent expressed concern with the transportation department with regard to the safety of bus stops and the appeals process. She expressed that for the past several years, her children have had a great educational experience. She was, however, disappointed with her experience this year, specifically with transportation, and wanted parent involvement in the appeals process, including the committee membership. I share that Dr. Kavanaugh and her team are best adept at the day-to-day operations, and as the school committee reviews the policy, we'll take her and any other feedback received into consideration. Another parent expressed that diversity-related issues need to be acknowledged clearly so the work can progress. This was in the context of diversity of abilities. She expressed the teachers and staff are very willing to work with her, but more work is needed. She shared other thoughts and goals for children requiring to lead independent lives and preparing them from early on with skills needed to do the same. I hope that some of the things that are going on with the CVTE and some of the other initiatives would help towards that. In all my conversations, I was very happy to continue to see the engaged community we have, the willingness to acknowledge successes when speaking of concerns, and their offer to be part of the solution for continued improvement. So, while thinking of all of this and given the goal of the school committee this year to support efforts related to growth and the difficult conversations that lie ahead on budget, and to assist the work of Dr. Kavanaugh in doing this year, I was hoping that we can explore creation of a small working group that can look to see areas in which we could support Dr. Kavanaugh further, whether it is timely partnership with town boards, spreading the word, thinking of best ways to engage the community from the start and bringing them along in the process. And I know, Amanda, you had expressed some interest in this area in the past, and I was just wondering if this is worth exploring, a small working group that can think a little bit and support Dr. Kavanaugh's work as to what the charge should be and bring it back to the committee. Just throwing it out there, if that's something folks would want to explore. Are you still interested, Amanda?
I'm very interested. I'm trying to figure out where the overlaps and intersections are of the various, there seem to be a lot of committees, rightly so, addressing growth. So I wouldn't want to be redundant. I mean, I think we have people sort of in a bunch of committees at this point, so I'd like to talk more about the need and where our piece is distinct from the growth study committee or,
the work that Dr. Kavanaugh is doing, and I know Jen is also very closely involved with some of the stuff. Yeah. So again, like I said, it's something worth exploring to me. It seemed like our need is now, right? We're growing at such a rapid pace, and we're talking about, we'll see upcoming, the capacity study will come in later, but also the budget, the capital items that are coming up. How do we bring the community along on the needs? I know Dr. Kavanaugh is doing a lot of work in this area, but what is it that we could possibly do? I know we put a school committee office hours geared towards growth. Are there other things in spreading the word, in speaking with people and bringing them along the process? Again, it's an exploration. I'm not suggesting that we form it right now. I'm just saying both exploring with Dr. Kavanaugh to see, is there some areas where she needs help where the school committee could have someone focused assisting? So it may be worth exploring. So putting it out there. Nancy or Meg, do you have any thoughts from anything that you want to share with regard to the office hours?
I think you covered pretty well.
I think you covered it. Thank you.
All right. So moving on to liaison reports. Anyone have anything interesting?
I have one, and it is the Growth Study Committee. So we met Wednesday night in my head. And as I mentioned before, one of the things that was discussed was the idea of and again, just an idea, this is just completely, I don't want anyone to hear about this and think this is a thing, because it's not, it's just an idea. The notion of looking into a position specific to economic development in Hopkinton. And the way that I think it impacts the schools is that in the job description that was proposed, it did have, included in that job description ideas for business internships and partnerships with the schools. And so after listening to the presentation tonight too, I think that it would make sense to make that kind of sort of connection. Nick, he said his last name real quickly, and I'm not sure if I got it correctly, but I think his last name is Slot from the Chamber of Commerce. Does anyone know? Forgive me, Nick. I get the first names every single time, and I add the last names. But he presented a wonderful sort of rationale for why this would be a good idea to have someone in place actively making those connections. So I think, depending on how the community receives it, we'll see. And the other thing that I thought was important for you all to know was a Mythbusters document draft was shared with the committee, and the myths that kind of pertain to the schools, and I can send you guys copies, but were the fact that Hopkinton's school-age population is growing. The first myth is that Hopkinton's population has been growing like mad, and presented some information that basically says it's about 2% a year, but then it said Hopkinton's school-age population is growing even faster, and it was presented as a myth. So I actually, I took the information that you spoke about earlier tonight, the enrollment numbers from 2010 to present, and show that we've got 560-something new kids since 2010, and almost 500 of those are in the last couple of years. So they may make adjustments to that because after I presented those numbers, there was a little bit of a quiet moment in the room, and I thought, well, maybe it's not as much as a myth as it's just been happening so much in the last couple of years, the last 2 years, really. So I think that's important for you to know. And then the other myth that relates to the school was most of the school-age population growth and associated school budget increases are due to the legacy farms build-out. And, those numbers that I had at the moment indicated that about 20% of the kids do come from legacy farms, but I didn't have updated information. I had our current enrollment update, but I didn't have updated information for the number of students that come from that development. So using old numbers in combination with new numbers, it roughs out to about 20%. So I said, I guess you have to decide how you feel about that 20% number. Does 20% mean a lot? Yes or no, and how does that all play into things? And either way, does it really matter where the kids come from? They're here. So
it's important to recognize that huge boom in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
We're right at that turnover point. Right. So I think I'm not sure if that 20% is a good or bad or accurate number, but I think it is important to recognize that a lot of growth has come from turnover.
Right, right.
Which can be expected because those homes were built, those families grew up, they're moving on or downsizing or whatnot.
Which is the last piece, so there's some data mining going on here for that information to try to figure out where kids who are enrolling in the school are coming from. Are they coming from home turnover? Are they coming from new development? So that's a work in progress, but it's something that they're trying to determine on the committee. And I think,
Jim, in the 500 number of the new kids, I think a lot of people forget that it's net new kids. I think people kind of think, oh, but then kids graduate too.
Right, yeah.
So I think it's important to keep reminding people that's net new kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. This is very helpful, and they may be looking at it from a very different lens when they're trying to differentiate, where they're coming from our perspective, from the school's perspective. The kids are here,
right,
and we have to take care of that. Of course, from a transportation point, I would think it does matter where they're coming from, and planning around the same. But it's interesting. It sounds like an interesting concept, myth busting. Thank you, Jen, and thank you also for continuing to speak with the committee in terms of the data that's needed from the capacity planning. That was the first we heard in terms of, specific requests.
And they do have that information now, which is good.
Yeah, so it's fabulous. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh, also for continuing to work with the committee.
Yes, we've had calendar on the last 2 Tuesday nights, so Jen's been there sort of by herself, but...
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll get back there.
Really good with the search function on our Google Drive now, trying to find Dr. Kavanaugh's old superintendent reports. I have that number.
Those are good. We also met as a policy group and discussed a little bit further on both the policies that came to us at the last school committee meeting. We're continuing that work a little bit, a discussion around that. I have one quick update on the Marathon Fund Committee. We have had an average of $25,000 to disperse in funding every year for athletic scholarships and various community programs. But for some reason, this year we only have $7,000. So there was a long conversation in the committee. Possibly should we be looking to reduce the scholarship which goes to our athletes, and looking at some accounts and reaching out to the CFO to better understand if there was any error. And in the meantime, some of the requests are either on hold or being turned down, which is not a happy situation at the Marathon Fund Committee. That's all I have for liaison reports. Anyone have anything else?
I have a quick one. The school calendar subcommittee met 2 nights ago, and there has been crafted a very generous and sensitive survey, which will be going out shortly. And so just asking everyone to keep your eyes open for it and to fill it out and send it back in within 10 days.
Thank you, Meg. We are running a little behind today, but maybe we'll make up, or maybe it'll continue.
I wonder which.
Well, I think the items on the agenda today require some thought, and these are not items we can move through quickly. So I do hope we take the time. Moving on to new business, HMS Handbook, Mr. Keller. Thank you for waiting patiently.
For your patience as we made this change. So the major changes that we made, first of which is removing the commonly asked questions, which used to be part of the handbook for many years, and we ultimately decided for a couple of reasons. One is to make the handbook shorter. That had it up to about 70 pages, and I don't think we need a handbook that extensive or lengthy. And then the other thing is we just felt like it actually probably served a better purpose being on the website in a more prominent location that people could find. So we've removed that. The second change we made was changing our conduct and effort rating. So in the past, students in each class would get a 4, 3, 2, or 1 in conduct or effort, and there were always questions as to what the 4 meant. And ultimately, we just decided it would make more sense to move that, to change that to language. So now students will receive an exceeding expectations in conduct and effort, meeting expectations, struggling to consistently meet expectations, or not meeting expectations. And then 2 other changes were a change to our language around absence reporting and dismissal reporting. Parents can still call the school to report their child's absence or an early dismissal, but we actually now move to a Google form that's on our website that parents are informing us that they appreciate. It's much easier. The office certainly appreciates it because it all populates into a spreadsheet, which makes it easier for us on that end. But again, that's still an option to call in as well. And then there was a change to the student record language that I know Mr. Bishop has in his handbook as well. That was a recommendation from the attorney. And those were the major changes.
Any questions, thoughts? I had one question, and perhaps it's directed towards Dr. Kavanaugh also, with regard to student records and saying that we don't need to seek explicit permission, right? And looking at the 603 CMR 2307 online, when you look at it, access to student records, there's a section that speaks to a school may release the following directory information. But it seems to talk about, I think we had talked about it in the context of the photographs too, that the school has to categorize which all are the items we consider as part of a student's record. And here it speaks to the fact that participation, and posters are provided that the school gives public notice of the types of information it may release under 603 CMR 23.07 and allows eligible students and parents a reasonable time after such notice to request that this information not be released without the prior consent of the eligible student or parent. So my interpretation of it seemed like we have to have, some categorization of what we consider as part of the student information, and then let parents know and give them that time frame and that window that whether they choose to give us consent or not, right? So something to that's how I interpreted it. I don't know if this is something we address in the handbook or if we address in the policy. And I looked at the student records policy, and we haven't called it out, policy GRA. So I felt like that may be something we probably have to look at it more from a policy standpoint.
So I think and Mr. Kelly, you can correct me if I'm not right about this, but I think what this is getting at when we made these changes is if a student is leaving the Hopkinton Public Schools, and, we want parents to sign to say that those records can go along to the receiving school, But sometimes that just doesn't happen. The family is moved to whatever. It gives us the opportunity to send those records off to a receiving school. That's what I think the intent of this policy is.
That's my understanding as well.
It was, and that language was recommended by our attorney when she was doing some other work from us pertaining to student records. That was a suggestion that she had made, that we add that language in.
Yeah.
And there's sort of a difference. So if you want to have your child be able to have, say, our school adjustment counselor be able to speak to, a student's outside counselor, there are permission forms. We very often have conversations about what is it that should actually be in a student's permanent record, right? So, but I think that what this is getting at very simply is just if a child leaves the district, we want to be able to send their records along.
Right. No, and I understand the intent behind it, but my reading of what is listed under 603 CMR was that we need to provide, so again, it was access to third parties, right, data, and I think in this case, it's the schools that you're speaking to, and it seems to say that you could do that without the consent of the eligible student or parent, provided that the schools give public notice of the types of information it may release under this, and allows eligible students and parents a reasonable time after such notice to request that this information not be released without the prior consent of the eligible student or parent. So it seems like, I just want to make sure that from a law standpoint, we are on the right. And looking back at our policy, which is referenced in your handbook, it seemed like there might be a little work that may be needed.
Yeah, I think maybe the question is, what do we mean by third party?
It does speak to, all these other aspects. For example, various services that they speak to, right? It talks to releasing it to athletic teams, class participation. So do you want to read this, or is it something we take offline?
No, I just don't think that sending it to a receiving school refers to third party.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if the committee would like to further explore that, or if you'd like an explanation from our legal counsel. It's
right.
Trying to follow, was what you were trying to get at, that the law says that we need to identify what we consider the information that can be sent, and we are wondering if we have actually done that?
That's one part of it.
And then it has to be posted, people have to have an opportunity to say, you can't do that.
Correct.
So I'm going to suggest that maybe the policy group take this offline and look at that, because I think those are good points, especially if the law is written that way, and we don't seem to be reflecting that in JRA. So I would say maybe if we could take it offline and take another look and marry up the legal language from 603 CMR to our JRA. I feel like the handbook is probably fine. It seems like the handbook's probably okay at that level, but maybe the policy level is a little bit.
That's all. I was just trying to circle back and tie it back to the policy.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very good idea for us to take a look at policy JRA just to make sure that it's in sync with what the handbook says.
Okay. So do we want to pursue just with that change? I had no other questions with all the other aspects that you have done. I'm sure a lot of thought has gone into especially the categorization that you have done on the effort part. Thank you for doing that. Do we want to move forward with this? Okay. I'd seek a motion to approve the revised HMS 2019-2020 handbook.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Meg, a second by Nancy. All those in favor?
Yes.
I'd like to abstain, and so it passes. Moving on to HMS stipend adjustments. Mr. Keller.
So this might seem a little odd for the replacement that we're making, but we try and run our clubs, we try and respond to our students' desires and requests for clubs, and over the years we've added countless clubs, and I think we're at the 32 clubs right now, and so it's exciting to be able to do that. Every year there are clubs that we no longer sustain, And right now, we did not have any interest in our economics club, so we had the money left over, and we had a group of students who were very passionate about Dungeons and Dragons. So they approached me, and we had a teacher who has an interest and a background in Dungeons and Dragons, and so he said that he would be willing to take that on. So I'm requesting that we replace the economics club for the coming school, or for the current school year, with the Dungeons and Dragons club.
Any questions, discussion?
I just love that this has come back after many years ago recalling this in my childhood.
We can thank Stranger Things, I think, for that,
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
All right, it's an even swap. I make this motion.
Thank you, Jen. A second?
I second it.
Okay.
Unless Meg wanted to say.
Oh, you can second. Motion by Jen, second by Nancy. All those in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay, I'm a yes as well, so it passes. Thank you, Mr. Keller.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Have a
Have a
good night.
lovely
Yes,
evening.
good night.
Good night.
Unless you want to hang out with us.
Now, that's a diplomatic answer there. Mr. Bishop, for HHS handbook.
Okay. Hello again.
Hello.
We've been using Google Docs for a while, so. won't
No
take-
competition between the schools.
And I'll do my best to try to get us back on schedule, because we certainly don't have much when it comes to the handbook at the high school. We have a few additions, one removal, and then one small amendment. So I know you have a copy of this as well. The first I'll start with is the removal. So as part of some discussions we've been having with students and staff and parents, kind of about our schedule. I know I came last year and talked a little bit about the flex block schedule, and we analyzed our advisory program, which we've had at the high school since 2004, and it was not meeting our needs anymore. We probably held on to it a year or two longer than we probably should have. So we decided to take a year off, at least a year off from advisory, and kind of explore how we can bring it back and make it a little bit more meaningful and effective for our students and staff. And part of removing advisory, we were able to bring on the every Friday Hiller Days. So that was kind of the swap, and of course the students were very excited about that swap, as is the faculty as well. They enjoyed the time to work together, and one of the Hiller Days is now an extra help Hiller Day, and that was a major success. The first one we had, kids were working with teachers, which is great to see. So the removal is the section in the handbook that talked about the advisory program. So we thought it made sense to kind of remove that out of the handbook for now. But again, it's not a closed deal. We'll look to potentially bring that back, maybe as part of our flex block schedule. We'll see how that all plays out. We'll continue to keep you updated on that. But that is the removal when it comes to the handbook. The additions, we talked about this a little bit earlier when our students spoke about last Tuesday, and Dr. Kavanaugh spoke about it as well, is the Tri-M and the National Art Honor Society. We haven't had those descriptions in our handbook, so we wanted to make sure we put them in. We had 10 students inducted into the Tri-M on last Tuesday and 28 into the Art Honor Society. So in the handbook is just a description of what those different National Honor Societies are. So those are two additions. The other addition is an addition policy about early graduation, and so there was the discussion earlier this year around it came up in conversation around early graduation. We haven't had many students graduate early. In my 15 years to high school, I can think of one that I've worked with graduating early. It was a different kind of circumstance, but it started to be talked about a little bit with a student this year, and guidance brought it up. So we found a policy, a school committee policy back from 2010, where it stated that there is a possibility to graduate early, and that the requirements will be published in the student handbook. And we didn't have the policy in the student handbook. So we are, I think you have the draft in front of you, but that is our kind of proposed policy that we've been using with the student that did ask to graduate early. Basically, there is a process where, I'm just trying to get to that page here, where the student will have to kind of submit a proposal to graduate early, at least 2 semesters before the date of graduation. They're supposed to research the option with their school counselor. There'll be a review committee made up of the assistant superintendent, principal, counseling department coordinator, and special educator, if applicable. It talks a little bit about how many credits can be taken in the summer. I don't think this option is right for many students. I think it's a very unique situation. I wouldn't recommend it, but it has come up, and we wanted to make sure that we had the policy at least published in the student handbook like we said we were going to. Then there's some other kind of bullet points about not being eligible for certain things like valedictorian and salutatorian, being able to have access to scholarships, but not being able to take part in senior week activities, because the student, technically, if they graduated early, would not necessarily be a senior if they did it before their senior year. I guess it depends on when the student is looking to graduate early. But again, this is just to kind of put that draft out there. I'm happy to answer any questions about this, but this would be an addition to the handbook. And then the amendment is similar to what Mr. Keller talked about with the student record. So I know you already kind of talked about that a little bit. So those are the just minor kind of changes, removals, additions, and amendments to the high school handbook. So
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Any questions, thoughts?
Just on the student record piece, I mean, the way it is worded, it does say for student transferring and pursuant to the law, so it would be, according to this, impossible to go outside the law. Like, you would have to follow the letter of the law. It's pretty brief language, so I'm comfortable with it.
I think the way the language is in the high school handbook is a little different than what's in the middle school handbook, and the reference back to the policy.
Yeah, maybe.
So for me, like I said, until we have that, I want to hold back, but I think it's okay. Once we find out, we can always revisit and adjust, right? Okay. Any further thoughts? Okay, looking for a motion to approve the revised HHS 2019-2020 handbook.
So moved.
Motion by Meg, second. Second by Amanda. All those in favor?
Yes.
I am an abstention, and with 4 yeses, it's a pass. Thank you so much, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you very much.
And moving right along to the stipend adjustments.
Yep. So we are looking to kind of reallocate some money, not asking for any additional money. We have a club fair at the beginning of the year and kind of assess what clubs are going to run and what ones are not based on interest. And typically we have some money that we can play around with and move to different clubs if there's a new interest. So I talked a little bit about advisory. We don't have it this year. There was a $2,500 stipend that was associated with the coordinator positions. We were to take that money and kind of shift it around a little bit. We took $1,500 of the $2,500 and created a second Unite coordinator. Unite is our orientation program. It's our upperclassmen working with our ninth graders as they transition into the high school. We have over 100 Unite mentors, so it was important to have an additional kind of support person to help with the coordination of all the orientation events, but then the different events that go on throughout the course of the year. So now we have, instead of one Unite and one advisor, we have 2 Unite coordinators. So that's $1,500. And then we're looking to spend the other $1,000, split them up $500 each in 2 new clubs. Obviously robotics, we've talked a lot about how that program is just really wonderful, and the numbers are through the roof. I think we've doubled the amount of teams and the amount of students that we have this year, and there's more coming up when I talked to Mr. Scott about the middle school. So there's a lot of interest, and he can do a lot, but he needs a little bit of support when it comes to the volume of students that are in the robotics club. So we would like to create a robotics co-advisor at $500. And then the other club that we're looking to create, and we've had this before, but we haven't had it as a formal club, is the high school quiz show. I think you might be familiar with that on WGBH. So this club would be preparing for that show, but it would also be taking part in other competitions as well. The WGBH is very particular. They only want 1 team per school, but there's a lot of different competitions where you can send multiple teams. So we're hoping to get that off the ground. We've had a lot of interest. We put this in the student memo and had a number of kids reach out wanting to be part of this. So we're looking forward. Actually, I think this Sunday is the trial, or at least the opening kind of weekend of the quiz show to kind of get your team squared away. So, yeah.
That's great.
I'm serving as the advisor now, but I'm looking forward to getting someone else to be part of that. So that's where the other $1,000 would go. So,
Thank you for thinking this through and, keeping the student experiences and their desires utmost.
Of course.
Thank you so much for all that you do. Looking for a motion, or unless someone has any other comments? Okay.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Amanda, second by Nancy. All those in favor?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, and so it passes. Mr. Bishop, again, high school hockey team overnight trip.
Yep, so we're looking to get your approval for an overnight hockey trip. This will be the second year that we've been doing this trip. We did it last year, where we send the hockey team down to Martha's Vineyard to play in, it's called the Fairleigh Dickinson Hockey Tournament, with 3 other communities, Attleboro, Plymouth North, and Martha's Vineyard. The team leaves on, I believe it's Saturday, the 15th of February, and then returns on Sunday, the 16th. So it's just a one-night overnight. They play in a tournament game on Saturday night, and then either the championship game or the consolation game on Sunday morning/afternoon. They leave around 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, and they are back by 5:45 on Sunday afternoon.
Any questions, thoughts? Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve the overnight hockey trip for the high school hockey team for February 15th and 16th, 2020 to Martha's Vineyard.
So moved.
Motion by Meg. A second?
Second.
Second by Jen. All those in favor?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, and so it passes. Thank you so much, Mr. Bishop.
Told you I'd be quick. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Crossing guard the traffic duty. Ms. Rothernick.
Thank you. Currently, we have a crossing guard that goes out onto West Main Street at the intersection of Pleasant Street and basically stops the traffic to get the buses to travel between Hopkins and Elmwood and Marathon to, get that transition going. What we're finding with all the other levels, with Hopkins in the middle school and high school, they're going down to that traffic light and they're sitting there through several cycles. With the amount of time that we have between the schools and the amount of traffic and everything that is really increasing, we're finding it more difficult to get these buses through the traffic. So what we're looking to do is actually have that person at the intersection on West Main and Pleasant Street for all 3 busing levels, and really just to get these buses out so that they continue on and, get the students home as fast as possible. I think it would be a beneficial addition to what we're facing.
Makes good sense. Some of those kids are on the bus for a really long time, so to get them out there faster makes good sense, yeah.
Okay, any questions, comments? Thank you for bringing this forth, Ms. Rothmick. I'm looking for a motion to approve the new crossing guard position.
So moved.
Motion by Meg, second. Second by Amanda. All those in favor?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, and so it passes.
Thank you for that.
Moving on to the next item, I'm just wondering, Dr. Kavanaugh, should we be looking at the capital plan first before we look to the design and engineering? Or do you want to go in that order? Why don't we look at the capital plan FY21, because it speaks to some of the work that goes into this.
Sure.
Okay, so just taking that out of order, so going over item H first, capital plan FY21.
So what you have is the 10-year plan, which we have done in previous years. What is a little bit different in that spreadsheet is I've given you not only what are the capital items, but also kind of the other smaller items, if you will, that still need replacement but would be carried in the operating budget. And the reason I'm pulling that out is because we need to really establish a sustainable replacement plan. But in order to do that, you will see an increase in the building and grounds operating budget to be able to carry those items that are less than the $25,000, not eligible for capital, but still need that sustainable replacement plan. So that's why you see those 2 different sections.
Excuse me a second. Carol, is there any way we could get this on the screen? Just to get people in the audience. I don't know if they're maybe interested. I don't know if we can do that, or...
You're looking for the green?
The green grid, yeah, the grid. Sorry.
Nope, I can... I got it, Carol.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Trying to pull it as big as possible.
It's pretty good.
See where it says 75% up there? On the in the top menu, it says 75% under the word view. Can you make that a little bit bigger there?
Okay. That's good. The difficulty is then it becomes, yeah, it's kind of cut up. So just for anyone who is watching at home, maybe if I could make that go away.
Spinning wheel of death.
And now we have a colorful rainbow. Anyway, so what we are looking at is this column, FY '21. And so what I was just speaking about are the items that are under 25,000. So for the capital, it's 25,000 is the threshold on an individual basis. So in order to maintain a sustainable replacement program for all the other things that are infrastructure or within the district, this shows you what needs to be carried on an annual basis within the operating budget, which you'll see presented when we do the regular budgets from Tim Person. Going down to the items that are individually over 25,000, so this would be the capital plan. So the first piece that we're looking at is our HVAC district-wide. And this is really looking at the larger units. So you'll see there was HVAC up here as well. These are smaller units, you know, in the $4,000 range, some of the exhaust fans. When you get into these units are in the $100,000 range in terms of replacing. So this is our 100 and 200,000. So you'll see we're looking to replace, you know, moving forward about 2 a year, moving from building to building. So that's what that will start in FY '21 with this 250,000. The boiler replacement, this is the second of in the middle school. So in the middle school, there are 2 boilers that we are looking to replace. Right now, we're in that design and engineering phase that was appropriated this year, this 160. So the future, this would be these 2 years to replace the 2 together. So that would do the middle school. Looking out into future years would be tackling the high school, these boilers out here. The roof replacements, currently we're in the design and engineering for the roof replacement, partial replacement at Hopkins and the middle school. This, we will be going out to bid in December, so we should have a very solid number as we progress along in this capital planning. But this is the original estimate that has been given to us by the design engineering firm, Gale, that is working with us currently. They've done their test cuts and we'll be putting together the bid for that to go out. So the Hopkins roof, in 2016, most of the Hopkins roof was done. When it was bid out, there was an alternate to do the entire roof. That alternate is the piece that did not get funded back in 2016. That's what we will be doing. So the Hopkins roof will be 100% done, and the middle school roof has not been done. So they're currently both leaking, so they're both in need of replacement at this time.
Can I ask you that technology area and the media in the library at Hopkins, is that as a result of the roof?
Actually not.
Okay. All right. I was afraid to ask the question because I was worried that was going to be the answer. Okay.
No, so that was a result of a storm, and it blew the cap off of a vent, so water poured in, and then we had another piece of equipment that was stuck in kind of an open position where water poured in.
Okay.
So those are being repaired. That's not the part of the roof, but, you know, they're being covered by insurance in terms of the damage that was done to the library.
Okay.
Vehicle replacements, so this again is this, you know, just tagging through the vehicles over the next couple of years. You know, there's a lot of wear and tear. They're used for plowing, they're using for moving everything throughout the district. So you have to kind of look at the repair history and see where you are in terms of the mechanics of the vehicles. So you'll see that there's a plan to get through the fleet in the next couple of years. Security systems, this is really to continue on with the cameras. This would be the last year of that audit that was done several years ago. And then as you look out going forward, it would be camera replacements for everything that has been done in the previous years. But this should be the last year of that last big push of the camera installations. The technology upgrades for the next year would be looking at the phones and the bell system. The phones, again, is townwide, it's not just the school, so that is something that is, would be together with the town, if you will. Looking out into future years, it would be other types of technology, such as our building management systems that need to be upgraded, and just various things going forward. But next year, the focus would be the phones and the bells. Elmwood feasibility study. This is really to kind of continue that march down the road of what are we going to do with the Elmwood School. This would go hand in hand with hopefully the MSBA allowing us or inviting us in to the process. So this takes us another step forward as well.
Can I ask just a clarification when you say it goes hand in hand with the MSBA, is that to say that if the MSBA reimburses it, the total amount that the town would absorb would not be $700,000?
That's correct. So if we get invited in, this $700,000 would be, partially reimbursed by, but this puts us ahead.
So we're ready.
So we're ready, but also, if you don't want any of those delays. Sometimes what happens is if you get invited into the MSBA process, you may have to have a special town meeting to move things along. So hopefully this kind of keeps us ahead of that curve. And again, hopefully we get invited in, but we don't have those answers. These next two are the portable. So these numbers right here are very soft numbers. What this is looking for is 2 portable classrooms at Elmwood and 4 portable classrooms at Hopkins. And to give you an idea, I know we're waiting on the capacity study, and actually I'll tag in the $5 million for the high school edition as well. Just some very rough costs in terms of our square footage of these buildings according to the MSBA standards. The high school is coming up approximately 30,000 square feet short. Hopkins is coming up about 12,000 square feet short, and Elmwood is looking to be about 20,000 square feet short. And that's according to MSBA academic standards. And the other piece to that too is that's looking only at our current enrollment. So that deficit in our square footage is not even forward-looking. So knowing where we are in terms of our enrollment and our growth, this is only a small piece that, doesn't even get us to what we'll probably hear more about when we hear from the capacity study.
Did you say 30,000 square feet at the high school?
Dr. Kavanaugh, when you presented the Elmwood information at the beginning, it sounded like not even best practice, but like recommended practice would be adding a 3rd grade and a 2nd grade classroom. And it sounded like the numbers were at least looking at 2 more classrooms, but then we had all those EL students coming up. Would 2 be enough to cover both, regular curriculum and programmatic space?
If you were going to have 2 additional 2nd grades and 1 additional 3rd grade, you would probably need to have 3 additional classrooms outside of that building, just because there's no way to free up that L space. But you could take the health room away, and we could do health on a cart. So 2 might work. I think The scary part for me is when I look at 30 and 30 as those numbers, or 30 and 32 as the kids who came in this year, that is something for us to think about. Would you need 2 classrooms or would you need 3 classrooms? And one of the things that Mrs. Rothermick and I have talked about is just this idea of if you start moving forward with the MSBA and you realize that, you're going to do some kind of construction to either renovate and rebuild on that site or build something new on another site, you still have kids in that building for 5 years, but does it make sense to simply lease those modular classrooms so you only have them for a set amount of time and then you get rid of them when you no longer need them? There's some value to them. But I am concerned about, do we say 2, do we say 3? Do you even say 4? We don't know at this point, but I think when we get that capacity study, it will help us to make that determination. Given the numbers I have right now, I would guess 3.
They're soft anyway.
Yeah, so these numbers for the portables, these are soft, which is, if we jump back in the agenda, why I'm looking to, go out and have that design engineering now so we know what these are. So the Hopkins space looks as though we can do 4 classrooms because we can stack them, and we can stack them up to a 2-story building. The Elmwood space is much more constrained, and it's a 1-story building. So where you can put the 2 portables, I don't know that you could do that same 4 stacked on the Elmwood site. So the Elmwood site itself is very constrained in terms of how many more portable classrooms can you get there. Hopkins, because there's a nice, neat little place where you could put and stack up. So it remains to be seen, and that's what that engineering study will help us with. How many, where do they go? Because in addition, once you put those portables there, so if you put the 4 portable classrooms on the back of Hopkins, you need to take into account the number of children that are now using that stairway. Is that stairway to code for now the amount of traffic? Where are the bathrooms? Now, does that fit with the amount of children? So there are a lot of things that go in to, not only placing it, but now where you're connecting it into the building, does that now still work? So there's a lot of considerations. But that gives you a rough idea of what we're talking about in terms of addressing the growth. Portables at Elmwood, portables at Hopkins, the addition onto the high school, and sadly enough, according to the MSBA growth square footage, we're already behind in Marathon as well. So we can get into that lease buy discussion at some point in time as well, but you may also think of buying what you put at Elmwood, because maybe you then need to pick it up and plop it over at Marathon.
Right.
So there's a lot that goes into this conversation. But.
So you touched upon, what does it mean, a portable classroom? Like, how portable is it?
Well, it's portable in that you dig footings and then you put the trailer on there, but then when you're done with it, there are wheels to it, so it's like a trailer. You put the wheels back under it and you roll it down the road. So it's not as simple as that, but it is portable in that way.
And we've been in one at Elmwood. Elmwood
has had it there for years.
So the ELL classroom is there.
Right.
Yeah, that's
I guess the reason I ask this is that it looks like we have growth across the schools, right? So to be one of the things when I hear of portable, that okay, if we are seeing growth, let's say in Hopkins right now, and that's where we need the classrooms, are we able to put them to middle school as the kids in the sections move? And I'm just wondering, why are portable classrooms chosen? Is it a temporary solution? As a temporary solution?
So temporary is an interesting word, because the Elmwood portables were a temporary solution.
Right.
You will see that a lot of times schools will put them in as a temporary solution, but they never go away. But in the case of Elmwood, where we know that the building itself is not up to 21st century standards for teaching, we know that we need to do something larger with that building. So that one could very well be a temporary until you come up with a final solution for what you're doing with that building. Hopkins, you could put those on saying it's temporary, and they could very well be there for 20 years.
Right.
So it depends on what you see as the longevity of that building. We don't see the longevity of the Elmwood building at all. We do see the longevity of Hopkins. But would Hopkins be repurposed in everything that needs to happen within the district? I don't know.
Right, right. I mean, just again, on those same lines, where the high school addition is an addition, right? Nothing temporary about it, and we're talking 6 classrooms, right? Which is at 5 million, and then we're talking about some portable classrooms for 2 and 3 million. So what's the right approach? Should it be more permanent? And I don't know what are the pros and cons of a portable versus a more permanent addition, whether in terms of, light or the permanency of the structure itself, or some of the, ventilation, heating, etc.
I do think that the costs that I'm carrying for the portables are high. That, they're, like I said, they're very soft costs, so I think you'll see those costs come down. But the other piece to it is the immediacy. So the high school, we won't be able to accomplish this summer. Portable classrooms you can accomplish this summer. So the urgency at the Elmwood and Hopkins, and not that there's not urgency to the high school, there is, but that's where we're at.
So, just to interrupt on that, with regard to the high school, I had thought if we could somehow, once we've come up with the money for the design and the engineering piece of the high school, that it would only be like less than a 6-month process. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay, so that it could be not for the opening of school, but for somewhere midway down the road for the high school.
So the difficulty with the high school build is we would need the design engineering, which was roughly around 350 at the May town meeting. You would not have anything biddable for somebody to start construction in the summer of 20.
Understand.
And then the connection to the school itself, you wouldn't be able to build during the school year. So that's where you run into the constraint that if we don't have the design engineering money now, you wouldn't be able to build until summer of 21.
If there was, for some other reason, a special town meeting, would it be possible to bring that forward as part of a special town meeting to get that kind of money?
Yes. Yeah, you would need that design engineering money now, because you would need to get all that accomplished and bid it and have a vendor in the wings for the day school gets out.
And is the other piece, the high school is already sort of set up to put on an addition? Does that factor in? I mean, the fittings are out there, everything, you don't have to do quite as much work as you would need to do to add to.
It does factor in, and also where we are putting the addition on the high school, we're cantilevering it over the loading dock, so you would not be able to just drop portables right there because you block the loading dock. So hence the building up on the elevation, so that you don't have to reconfigure the entire downstairs basement floor of the high school.
But it looks like, and I think this is what you're getting at, the value on the permanent ones is a better value than the temporary ones.
Right, that's kind of what I was thinking at the high school. Like, there's no point to temporary at the high school because everything's already set up to add those additions. And we need...
Yes, and the huge numbers you see now in grades 1, 2, 3 are eventually going to be in this building.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And you see the longevity, like you said, of this building, right? The high school and some of the other schools, whereas with Elmwood, that's not the case.
That's correct.
Right. So all these things are in consideration here.
Yes. And I think once we get the capacity study as well, their initial findings will be just this. You're short X amount of square footage, And that may be, 8 classroom, main classroom spaces, 4 special education spaces, so they'll have more details. This, again, is kind of at that 40,000-foot level, but they'll take it to a more detailed level.
But the preliminary findings are based on the current snapshot of known
Based on current
students. Will the final study be looking out?
Yes, because they'll be doing the enrollment study as well. So
So-
this would be considered your existing conditions.
So to open the doors next year, kind of thing.
And Ms. Rothmick, I would think that as you were putting all of these together, you thought of, you have laid out, this is very helpful, first of all, to be able to see how these numbers are for the next however many years, 10 years here, right? And I'm just wondering, are there portions of it which could be moved out into the next year, let's say? And I know I hear the number, I hear the 270 kids, and that makes me think, okay, we need this like right now. And at the same time, it's wanting all of this, right, building all of this all in the same year. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts? You must have gone through that process. If you could share some of that in terms of pacing, is it possible to do 2 now? And, the cost benefit of it, sometimes it doesn't make sense, right? So if you can share some of your thoughts around that.
I think one of the things that I would say is if we go back to the slide where we looked at 500 new students in 3 years' time, and we said that if you put all of those students into Hopkins, you could spread them out over 24 classrooms, right? And that is what we would normally have done. In this situation, if you had 2 additional classrooms at Elmwood and 4 at Hopkins and 6 at the high school, that's only 12 of the 24 that we're talking about. And my guess is you're going to see another 250 kids in the fall of 2020. I think waiting is going to put us in a place next year where we are not able to offer kids the quality of education that we would hope to.
The one that I totally agree with that, but the one that caught my eye was the roofing. Understanding the roofing number, it's a big number with a lot of other big numbers, so I didn't know if I know there's leaking, I don't know how bad it is. Is there any chance to maybe finish Hopkins next year and then do the middle school the following year? I mean, I don't know what risk we take when we do that. I don't know, it's just a big number, and that it doesn't involve student bodies needing places to sit, and if there's any stretching we could do there.
Well, knowing that several teachers lived through the middle school roof that blew off from the storm.
Oh, yeah.
And the water coming in and, getting on their instructional materials, buckling their floors.
Okay.
So, I mean, that it does interrupt student learning.
Yeah.
And it does interrupt teaching. It does not make for a great environment, and if we have some storms, you may end up moving kids around. I mean, just the library, now that was not where the roof is leaking actively, but that's the kind of thing that happens. And then the students are not able to access the library, as a for instance. So those are the risks.
Is the bulk of that the middle school, where there's only a fraction of the Hopkins roof left? Or is it?
I don't have it broken down, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Nancy, please.
In going back to the enrollment that we discussed earlier, it really is just, it feels really a lot of pressure to move these forward fast enough to keep pace so that we're not constantly reacting to the fact that we have 250 new students and where are we going to put them, because the problem is not going to get better. It's just going to keep increasing. And we could be, rather than trying to catch up, if we could try to keep pace with it.
And if the growth had happened a little bit more gradually, we would have been able to stagger some of these projects. But it has not happened gradually, and according to the projections that we were receiving from NESDEC, it wasn't going to happen. So it really caught everybody off guard, but the students are here, and there's no sign of it stopping. It's not a good number. and we all understand that.
No, that's an excellent point you make, and I think that's the point that we need to, keep remembering and reminding to the community too, that if this was gradual, if the student growth was gradual, some of these requests would come in gradually, but because of the rapid increase, this is the ask that is being put forth. I'm wondering if you have had conversations with our town partners about this, and has there been any conversation at all about this?
So when you received this, I also sent it to the CFO, Tim O'Leary, so he has this as well.
So, just back to the timing issue, I am concerned with the high school, because in looking at the numbers that Dr. Kavanaugh had presented, I understand even if we were able to break ground this summer, it wouldn't be done until the fall, but which seems like that would be not for opening, but further into the year, which would seem like it would be tenable for the incoming class that's in 8th grade, that would be 9th grade next year. But the class behind that has 318 kids in it right now, as opposed to the kids that are going to be graduating at 294, and we know historically that 318 is probably going to jump by a fair amount. If we don't have that addition in place when that current 7th grade hits 9th grade, I'm concerned with what they're going to do for that semester.
Yeah.
Just would be, I don't know if you have had any opportunity to discuss with the select board, if you guys have done any budget advisory meetings on any potential, that might be something to bring up, the potential of if there could be a meeting to move this forward for special town meeting to look at the funding for that.
No, I have, like I said, I've requested for a budget advisory committee, convening, but I haven't heard back, neither from the chair of the select board nor from the chair of the appropriations committee. I will follow up. They may have other things that they're possibly looking at, but I will remind them. I think it's important, I said that out loud, that we need to be talking. This is going to be clearly not an easy conversation, but this is reality. And, we're facing this across the town, not just in the schools, but certainly in the schools, especially with the classroom sizes and, all that we've been asking of the teachers. We've talked about it at the joint session also. So, yeah.
My concern is that it's not enough. I mean, it might be all that we can do, but, we're not even looking at what's coming, in the years ahead. And the numbers are already populating these classrooms fully. So my biggest concern is that while this is a huge ask, we're still going to fall incredibly short and be crammed. And people are going to wonder why, well, we just put these on. Why are we still crammed? And so the reality is we just have a lot of people moving in. So.
That's right. Yeah. I really see what's happening at Elmwood and Hopkins as a very temporary solution. And as Mrs. Rodmick said, I would love to see there be 3 portable classrooms outside of Elmwood based on the numbers that we're seeing there. But if physically you can't place them there, then we have, a very big problem. Sure, you can take the health room, but that's really the last room standing. Right? I mean, after that, you're kind of done. And I feel like we're always playing catch-up. That's a problem. Hopefully, when we get that capacity study, we're going to be able to put something forth that says, what happens when you have another 500 kids in the next 3 years, right? Or where do you get to that place where we're going to plateau? Will we be a school system of 5,000 students? Because now we're a school system of 4. Will we be a school system of 6,000, 7,000? But clearly, the physical plants that we have in place right now will not sustain. No. They just will not, right? There needs to be a lot of, I think, planning out that kind of genuine building, real construction.
Right. And you make the absolutely right point to what we were talking about, the portable classrooms. Elmwood portable makes sense, right? Because we don't know the future of that building yet. But in terms of Hopkins and whatnot, should we be looking at something more permanent? And what about these numbers? So I think the capacity study, I don't know how much of the results have been shared. I'm very eager to hear those numbers. I mean, I'm dreading them. But also wanting to know so we can plan ahead. And to your point, what will be the size of our district in 5 years? And should we be looking to build for the next 2 years, or should we be looking to build for at least 5 to 6 to 7 years? So these are questions I think we should all think of, not just as a committee, but as a community, as to what we want to do.
One last, if we apply for MSBA funding, we can only plan for the students we have, is that correct? Or how far out can we project? Is that correct? So if we get invited into the study, we can only build for the students we have?
Which is why
Well,
Marathon.
MSBA has a very strict formula.
Yeah, I mean, so they do allow projections, but they allow a projection based on their formula.
Okay.
So this is where, Hopkinton got caught with Marathon.
Yep.
So the projection said one thing, but MSBA will force upon you their formula. So very quickly into the process, Hopkinton figured out that they were already behind and added those 4 additional classrooms.
Right.
Well, here we are.
2 years later.
One year in, and it already shows that we're behind in square footage.
Right.
So I think it's an argument that we'll be able to have with the MSBA in terms of their formula that they want to force upon us based on the trajectory that we're seeing.
So there's room for, potentially room for negotiation.
There's potentially room for
Potentially.
negotiation,
Okay.
but MSBA is pretty strict
Okay.
in their formularies that they use.
All right.
And I'm hopeful that that's where we could possibly tap in and kind of take help from our legislators and see if they can also, speak for the district and verbalize some of the concerns that we have talked about and the trends we have been seeing.
Well, I mean, we do now have history on our side in terms of what happened with Marathon.
Right.
So, that hopefully is a win in our pocket as we go forward.
And would they be willing to look at, the capacity study results?
Would they be willing to?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay, that's great.
Would that change anything? Who knows? But that's good to know that there is a little
But I mean,
potential.
they're building, their capacity study is being built upon MSBA educational regulations. So, they're going through the process that the MSBA is going to go through as well.
Right.
So in that case, we are using the same formulas.
Right.
All right.
So moving down, you'll see there is 200,000 to continue on the White House. As you know, that now is housing the 18 to 22 program. There was a engineering assessment that was done back in 2012, and this is their pricing that they had also put forth in terms of what needed to be done to that building, roof siding and the windows. The other pieces from that, we have done over the years, and then we have done basically this summer, flooring, painting, and some of those basic things. So this 206 should make the White House a sound building for the future.
Great.
And then the last one, the wetlands order of conditions. Unfortunately, this is something that just doesn't go away. We had this on the capital plan last year for the full 100,000. However, to balance the budget, we were asked to make cuts. And so we cut that item, and they've done some initial estimates, and the estimate is correct at 100,000. So we need that additional 60 to finally replicate the wetlands and close out that order of conditions, which now is tagged to the turf fields. So while it was an open order of conditions from building the fields from the original high school, it got tagged onto the turf fields. So in order to close out the turf fields now, this is connected there. So it lives on, and
Another year.
another 60,000.
22 years later, whatever, 24 years later. Right.
So again, it's an extremely large number. Most of it is building. And again, because the kids are here, we need a place to put them. And it was not gradual. It wasn't something that we could string out over a number of years. So you are not voting tonight. This is just the first introduction, so if you have any questions, or you'll be voting at the next meeting.
Thank you for all this work.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work.
Do you typically get any response from any of the other town partners about when you share this with them prior to us voting that would warrant adjustment, or do we?
Probably not this early in the process. So keep in mind, our budget, everything that we do is much earlier in the process than the town deadlines,
Right.
just because of the timing of our meetings.
Right, okay. All right.
Thank you so much for working through this. Much appreciated. I know this was not easy, and I'm sure there are many people who worked with you on this, so thanks to everyone.
Yep,
for
and
putting this
thank you
together.
for Ashok and Tim for being here in case you had questions for them.
I kept looking at the agenda like, where are they? Where are they?
Yeah. Why are they here at 10 o'clock?
I know.
So if you don't have questions for them, they can go.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Night-night.
Have a good night. Thank you. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Okay, hopefully, we will be able to impress our town partners as well as the community. I don't see who can't understand when you see a 270 student number increase, that there is a need right now. So thank you, Ms. Rothermick, for bringing this forth, and I know this work will continue. So going back to item G, design and engineering for educational modular units.
So following on to this, what I'm looking to do is get the design engineering for these units so that we can get these also out to bid now, so that this process can happen over the summer. That's the most important piece to it. The thought would be to use the host community agreement, the mitigation money that we appropriated at the May town meeting, because clearly this is addressing growth. We have not used this fund so far this year, so that would be the suggestion of where this money would come from.
And when would you go out, Ms. Rothermick, for this work? The reason I ask this is that I am concerned that the capacity planning study is going to come, and then we're going to say, oh, 4 classrooms are not enough. So
initially, they'll be looking at what is needed for permitting, and, so it will fall into place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, looking for a motion to approve the design and engineering for educational modular units at Elmwood School and Hopkins Elementary School with an estimated cost of $37,400.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Meg, second by Amanda. All those in favor?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so it passes. Thank you, Ms. Rothermick. We don't have old business. This is an opportunity for public comment. If we have any member of the public looking for a comment. Okay.
All run away.
Future agenda items. Does anyone have any recommendations? Okay, none. Moving on to items by consensus. I had a couple of comments. I don't know if anyone else had anything. My name was misspelt. And I'd like that corrected in the minutes, please.
Absolutely.
In
all of them?
No, just in a few of them towards the end. It must be a copy-paste error.
Okay.
And I think Dorothy Presser's name was...
Mina, my apologies. I will fix it immediately.
No, it's a small error.
Well, that's not good.
I think with just those changes, we should be okay.
And that's a clerical, so you can probably vote on them as long as I fix the...
I think so.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Dr. Cameron,
Ready?
please.
Okay, as superintendent, I recommend the school committee vote to approve of the items by consensus as outlined in your agenda.
Looking for a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Meg, second by Nancy. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm a yes as well. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion by Meg and a second by Nancy. All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, and so we are adjourned. Our next meeting will be on November 14th, 2019. We will have an executive session followed by a regular meeting at 6 p.m. right here at the high school library. Thank you and have a wonderful night.
Good night.